Ice Trey and Spicy P are instantly the best duo in the NBA before they even get on the court. I mean, Ice Spice? That's the greatest nickname for a duo in NBA history, and it isn't even close. Seriously though, I've been debating back and forth about whether adding Pascal Siakam is the right direction for this Hawks team to take, and if I should even make this video in the first place, as trade talks have gradually died down, and Toronto is notoriously stingy when making trades. I mean, just look at what they're asking for OG Anunoby. Because of this, either you're watching this video after Hawks massively overpaid with young talent for Siakam, which would send me into a month-long rant on Twitter and spiraling into depression, or fleece with some of our veteran starters due to Siakam's contract situation, or nothing happened. Regardless, the Hawks' interest in Siakam and his unique skill set is proof that the front office has finally realized a huge hole in the roster. Let's break down the player Siakam is, what he could be for the Hawks, and how they may be able to replicate some of his impact with pieces already on the roster.
He's very versatile.
I have talked endlessly about the Hawks' lack of versatility on both sides of the ball, particularly in the front court, since at least the beginning of the 2022 season. And this is especially problematic on offense, and why I was hoping we clear up some space among our bigs, because our front court was probably the most limited in the league when it came to attacking closeouts and creating advantages for others. And the eye test and stats back it up. Per NBA Court Optics, the Hawks only had 10.2 possessions per game, where the front court made 4+ passes in a single possession, which was dead last in the league. League average was 15.73 possessions. And those 10.2 possessions only accounted for 10.6% of the Hawks' total offensive possessions. League average was 17.2%. Now, of course, the ball wasn't trained in DeJounte's hands a ton last season, but that is just as representative of the personnel around them as it is a reflection of the backcourt's playstyle. The starting front court with DeAndre Hunter, John Collins, and Clint Capella just didn't do well maintaining advantages in attacking space. This matters because the majority of teams that had 15% or more of the possessions where their front court made 4+ passes in a single possession and scored at least 1.15 points per possession are all contenders or competitive playoff teams. I'm talking the Celtics, the Cavs, the Nuggets, the Warriors, the Grizzlies, the Bucks, the Kings, or the future prominent passing forwards or big men in the Rockets and the Raptors, who ranked 4th with 18.5 possessions with 4+ front court passes per game. Siakam is a major contributor to the Raptors ball movement, and as I dug into the numbers, it's pretty clear how much more skilled he is as a playmaker than anyone who started in the Hawks front court. Siakam made 339 passes out of the paint last season. The entire Hawks starting front court combined for just 92. Pascal had 4 times more assists from the paint at 103 than Clint, JC, and Dre combined with just 25. The Hawks starting front court combined for just 3.5 assists per game, which was the lowest in the league. And when you look at the entire list, there's a pattern here. Teams with ball-dominant guards are lacking playmaking for their bigs. This is probably due to lack of offensive opportunity and the roster construction needed to maximize ball-dominant guards, and it's also why the teams in the bottom 5 stagnated in the playoffs or didn't make it at all. Lack of offensive versatility limited their options to attack playoff defenses, and this is why it's imperative that the Hawks solve this issue before next season, and one of those solutions is Siakam. I want to illustrate Siakam's unique offensive skill set, particularly out of pick and roll. Only 17 forwards ran 4 more ball screens last season. Siakam was 10th in points per possession at .93, which was actually 92nd percentile in the entire league. There were 19 forwards who set screens and rolled at least 1 possession per game. Out of these 19, only 3 forwards in the entire NBA also ran 4 ball screens a game: LeBron James, Jason Tatum, and Pascal Siakam.
Siakam is one of 5 players who averaged 24+ points, 7+ rebounds, and 5+ assists last season, a list that includes Jokic, Luka, Giannis, and Bron. Pascal is one of the few players who has the capability to be impactful in nearly every facet of the game.
While Siakam is one of the more skilled players in the league when creating his own shot, there's a reason why his most efficient season came in 2019, playing alongside Kawhi Leonard. With Kawhi and Kyle Lowry handling the majority of the shot creation, Siakam posted a 63.2 true shooting percentage, which was in the 93rd percentile that season, and shot a career-high 36.9% from 3. 56.6% of his total makes were assisted that year, which has gradually dipped in the following seasons to just 39.7% in this most recent season. B-Ball Index 3-point openness rating also shows his shot quality drastically decreased over the last couple of seasons. In 2019, he had an openness rating of +2, which ranked in the 98th percentile, and in 2023, a rating of just +0.36, 66th percentile. Playing with the best passer in the league, Trae Young, will unlock that version of Siakam once more, as self-created shots will almost always have a higher degree of difficulty. Now let's talk the defensive side of the ball. Pascal offers more aggressive options on ball screens than JC. He's more capable of either hedging, blitzing, or full-on switching onto perimeter players and holding his own. Now he isn't a natural rim protector, and the Hawks will miss JC's weak side rim protection. But Siakam's usually in the right position as a low man, and that can at the very least offer resistance. He's one of the rare guys who can switch in guard 1 through 4 and is a good help defender in general. He was 99th percentile in defensive versatility via B-Ball Index. Raptors fans have pointed to his heavy minutes and offensive involvement as explanations for why his defense fell off, which makes sense especially considering how many ISOs and pick and rolls he had to run while also guarding bigs until Jakob Poeltl joined at the deadline. His defensive metrics from the season look like a completely different player from his best season in 2019, and this article written by Jackson Frank may explain why, as he breaks down the self-deprecating nature of Toronto's defense. The Raptors play such an aggressive style of defense, switching nearly every ball screen and routinely gamble for steals. While that style places the Raptors first in the league in deflections, it also demands a ton of effort from its players, and their weak bench and Nick Nurse playing his starters excessive minutes compounds the load on their starters. This conundrum, plus the lack of a rim protecting big man, plus Fred's regression as a point of attack defender, are all reasons why Toronto's aggressive defense failed last season. I'd expect his defense to return somewhere close to his peak form, as he wouldn't have to carry all the offensive load in Atlanta. Siakam's excellent on and off ball, has great length, gets deflections, covers a lot of ground in a short time, and has great hands. His only weakness, honestly, is some players can overpower him.
How much pressure you apply.
On the rim!
Rim pressure has become NBA Twitter's favorite word. I mean, people are even criticizing KD.
You think you put a lot of pressure on the rim now?
I just think how y'all even look at the game is whack.
And it's become sort of a buzzword around basketball, but this is somewhere that the Hawks generally need some help in. Looking at the numbers, I mean, it wouldn't seem like a big area of need. The Hawks were 13th in drives per game at 47.7. When you look at who's doing the driving though, Trey drove 18 times per game, DeJounte 12 times per game. So 63% of your rim pressure is coming from two guys. But it's also important to consider what exact type of rim pressure you're getting. Virtually all rim pressure was generated by Trey last season because DeJounte has the tools to be a strong slasher, but prefers finesse and would often stop short of the rim and offer middies or floaters. DeAndre Hunter struggled getting there without an advantage being created for him. And outside of them, most of the team is perimeter oriented or they can't dribble. So the vast majority of the at the rim shots are created by Trey or off of putbacks and offensive rebounds. Siakam can drive closeouts and get to the rim, create for himself out of isolation or post-ups, finish at the cup out of pick and roll, and he's a strong rebounder at his position. Siakam drove the ball 13.7 times per game, which ranked 19th, and he had the 12th lowest turnover percentage at 5% out of 51 qualified players who drove at least 10 times per game. He had a 92nd percentile in rim shot creation according to B-Ball Index and an A+ in finishing talent. He also shot 71.5% at the rim, which is 6th among forwards who took at least 4 shots per game and 21st in the whole league. When you look at his points per possession and all the ways the player can get to the rim, in post-ups he's in the 97th percentile at 0.99 points per possession. In ISO he's in the 96th percentile at 0.97 points per possession. On cuts he's in the 97th percentile at 1.41. And at putbacks he's in the 87th percentile at 1.19. Siakam boasts a diversified skill set to attack the rim, while being one of the most elite players in the league at pretty much everywhere a player can get to the cup. The areas he's strongest in just so happen to be where the Hawks need the most help. Siakam's ability to drive the ball, draw the defense's attention, is magnified by his ability to create for others out of all that attention he draws.
He creates
Advantages.
The Hawks struggled in minutes without Trey, even with the addition of DeJounte. With 3 stars, staggering would ensure at least one of the threes on the court at the same time. DeJounte is a great passer, but Siakam's size and driving skills gives him the edge as the best secondary creator Trey has played with, and would open up the game for everyone else on the team, including Trey playing off ball more. There were so many times last season where possessions fizzled out because the Hawks forward couldn't simply dribble the ball without turning it over, attack closeouts, or leverage advantages created for them, and they rarely, if ever, made the extra pass once the defense was in rotation. When you look at Siakam's profile in particular, he was 19th in double teams at 13.3 per game. That shows the gravity he has as a scorer, and 9th in points per possession after being double teamed at 1.19 points per possession. Again, that's encouraging because it shows that he's making the right read out of those double teams. He's not forcing the action. He was awarded an 8 in box creation, which is a statistic designed by Ben Taylor of Thinking Basketball to estimate open shots created for teammates by drawing defensive attention. And that +8 puts Siakam in the top 5% of the league. He generated 5.3 high-value assists per 75 possessions. High-value assists are basically rim, three-pointer, or free throw assists, and that's a great number. Trae Young has already proven himself as one of the best offensive engines in the league. He's a walking top 5 offense due to his unmatched manipulation out of the pick and roll, with the Hawks admittedly finishing 7th in offensive rating last season, but they did finish 4th under a real coach in Quinn Snyder. Trae also powered the Hawks to the 2nd best offensive rating in the league in 2022, but pairing Siakam with Trey and DeJounte will give the Hawks unparalleled versatility on both ends of the court and has the potential to unlock the most diverse and effective offense in the Trae Young era. With any acquisition, there are going to be some cons, so let's get into 3 that immediately come to mind with the potential addition of Siakam. The Hawks had one of the lowest 3-point attempt rates last season, which picked up a bit under Quinn Snyder. They finished 28th in the league at 30.5 3-point attempts per game. Snyder's coaching style is a lot more conducive to 5-out alignments or 4-out with the rim protecting big, and his principles encourage more 3-point attempts. That's not really Siakam's game. He isn't a phenomenal 3-point shooter, but I don't think there's any way he'll be worse than 2022-2023 John Collins, with all due respect. And he brings the added skill set of having a dribble package. Either way, he probably isn't helping a team that struggled to finding a mix of optimal spacing and defense. Last season, Onyeka shot 45% on mid-range jumpers on 145 attempts, which is promising, and stretching his range to the 3-point line would be massive, but that shouldn't be the expectation. The spacing would definitely be tough with both Siakam and Clint on the court. This season, Siakam shot 32% on threes overall, 34% on catch and shoot threes on 3 attempts per game. It's worth noting, though, that he shot 36.9% on threes in 2019 when he had way lower offensive and playmaking responsibilities, and even better, he shot 38.1% on catch and shoot threes on 2.5 attempts per game that same season. I think he's more than capable of knocking down spot-up threes, but it won't be on high volume, like 5 or 6 threes per game. He'll knock them down enough for teams to show him more respect than they showed Collins and Jalen Johnson this season, though, for sure. One of the repercussions of having less than optimal spacing is the absolute need for shooting alongside the rest of the starting lineup. If Siakam is a Hawk, this basically necessitates Saddiq Bey starting at the 3. Now, this isn't necessarily a bad thing, at least from the offensive perspective, as this floor spacing capability would open up the offense massively. However, this means that the starting lineup lacks anyone who can reliably be the primary defender against the league's best scorers. DeJounte isn't that type of defender. He's much more of a defensive playmaker than a defensive stopper, and he doesn't have the size to guard wings. Saddiq doesn't have the foot speed or defensive technique, at least not yet. Siakam could possibly fill this role against more methodical scorers like DeRozan or Doncic, but that leaves Bey matched up against opposing fours, which could be a problem against a couple of teams. AJ Griffin was a positive defender as a rookie and made strides as a team defender positionally and as a screen navigator in Summer League this year, but I don't see him fulfilling that role for us unless he regains his high school athleticism. Jalen Johnson has flashed that ability defensively, but he isn't a consistent enough shooter, even if his stroke looked much more confident against the Celtics in the playoffs. The reality is, as much as Hawks fans have been underwhelmed by DeAndre Hunter's defense, look, I'm right there with y'all, he's the only guy on our roster suited for this role. If he is traded, which he probably will be if we get Siakam, the Hawks no longer have one of the more valuable archetypes in the NBA, a 3-and-D wing who will hold up against the league's best scorers and would have to toggle between matchups to try and survive defensively without sabotaging the spacing and overall offensive efficiency.
What about the young ones?
Another concern is potentially slowing the young guys' development on the roster. The addition of Siakam might actually accelerate the development of Onyeka Okongwu as Spicy P coming to Atlanta probably means that Clint is traded, which gives OO the starting job in at least 30 plus minutes per night. For every other young guy though, Pascal being on the team means less on-ball reps for everyone else, areas that Jalen, AJ, and Kobe Buffkin need experience in to grow into the players I believe they could be one day. That doesn't mean they won't ever get these opportunities, as every season brings injuries, but it'll definitely be less minutes available to them, especially in Jalen's case, who could be splitting minutes with Bey and even starting some games if we didn't get Pascal. I mentioned in the intro that the Hawks may be able to replicate some of Siakam's potential impact with pieces already on the roster, and that optimism is entirely because of Onyeka Okongwu and Jalen Johnson. JJ and OO only had 2 fewer paint assists than the starters in fewer minutes. They averaged more assists per 75 possessions than the entire starting front court combined, and it's more than just increased playmaking with these two as well. Both of them bring a level of versatility on both ends the Hawks have yet to see with Trey on the roster. Onyeka had a great third season. He was among the league's most efficient players, shooting 63.8% from the field, 78.1% from the line, and finished with the 5th highest true shooting percentage in the NBA. He averaged 6.3 screen assists per 75 possessions and scored 1.27 points per possession as a rollman. With his growing ability to space the floor and flashes of potential as a dribble handoff hub, we've only witnessed the surface of his offensive potential.
That's just the tip of this iceberg.
The defense is already special. I mean, just look at all the areas he's elite at. He was legitimately one of the best post defenders in the NBA, ranked in the 99th percentile. He contested 38.7% of shots at the rim, and he held opponents to just 48.4% from the field. Jalen Johnson's impact isn't as concrete because he didn't play the same amount of minutes and his role fluctuated a bit, but the potential to be great just pops off the screen. His game against the Bulls had me so hyped because he flashed everything that can make him so special. His defensive matchup pie chart is pretty diverse, which places him in the 90th percentile in defensive position versatility, and he's disruptive on the ball and in the passing lanes, averaging 3.1 deflections and 1.3 steals per 75 possessions. He was impactful at the rim, using his length and strength to disrupt shots. In fact, opponents shot 4.7% less than expected at the rim when he contested shots. Offensively, Jalen was at his best when he was unable to grab the rebound and push in transition. He shot 66.9% at the rim, which is top 20% in the league, and showed some great decision making in the short roll, shooting himself or making kickouts. He finished the season in the 82nd percentile on runners and averaged 1.07 points per shot, and that in-between game put defenses in a tough spot. 3-point shooting is his swing skill. He was routinely ignored behind the line by opponents, but he has such great touch that I'm not worried about it long term. As of right now, of course, Onyeka and Jalen aren't close to the player Siakam is, but together in Snyder's offense, they have the potential to inject some much-needed utility into the Hawks' rotation, with plenty of Onyeka and Jalen dribble handoffs and pick and rolls, where they can punish rotations with their short roll passing or finishing at the rim, or just shooting the ball. Every NBA franchise reaches a point where they have to choose between the red or the blue pill. A proverbial fork in the road where one path accelerates a team closer to enshrinement as the best team in the NBA, and the other is a slippery slope, possibly leading to decades of wallowing in the desolate pits of the worst teams of the league. A franchise-defining moment where a team has to decide whether it's worth consolidating their homegrown talent and mortgaging their future, the players they spend countless hours scouting, molding, and developing into impact players with real value for a return that can finally push them over the top. This is the void of uncertainty the Hawks find themselves staring in. My opinion on this deal and how it improves the Hawks' odds of reaching the upper echelon of contention in the NBA is ultra dependent on the price of acquiring Pascal Siakam. If the cost is 2 veteran starters plus 2 or 3 of the young guys, I'm hanging up the phone. I'm not convinced that the addition of Siakam at the cost it would take to get him makes the Hawks contenders, especially considering how important it is to retain young talent on team-friendly contracts on a new CBA and the fact he'll be an unrestricted free agent next season. This potential move doesn't make the Hawks a bona fide contender if they have to give up these impactful young players like AD and Kawhi did for the Lakers and Raptors. These next couple weeks may very well determine the next 5 to 10 years of the entire franchise, and I'm hoping they choose to be patient and give this roster one more season under Quinn Snyder, unless they can somehow bring Ice Spice to Atlanta without sending the young guys.
Let me know what you think the Hawks should do this year in the comments below, and please subscribe. Thank you for taking the time to watch, and keep an eye out for my next video dropping later this week. Y'all be safe.